Hello friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. We're starting today's video with a story that proves one thing: don't bite the hand that brews your coffee. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Tyrant Bosch demanded coffee, so I gave him the sweetest exit he never saw coming. Many moons ago, back when office files lived in metal drawers instead of cloud drives, I worked for a building management company in downtown Minneapolis. The job was as analog as it gets: thousands of physical folders tracking parking spot rentals, tenant payments, bounced checks, and random notes scribbled in pen like someone thought they'd invent their own shorthand system. My days were spent shuffling through alphabetized chaos while hunched over a desk that squeaked every time I so much as breathed. The guy I worked for? Frank. Real piece of work from eastern New Jersey. Frank was the kind of man who thought barking orders was a leadership strategy and believed the office existed solely to orbit around his needs. On a good day, he was an arrogant, loud narcissist. On a bad day, he was a full-blown tyrant with a superiority complex fueled by caffeine and a sense of entitlement so thick you could cut it with a knife. One particular afternoon, not long after I got back from lunch, I was buried underneath about 2 feet of folders. I just collected them from the archive room and was heading back to input payment details into what passed for our system, a long wooden filing cabinet and a dusty ledger book. I was mid-step when I heard the unmistakable sound of Frank's ceramic coffee mug tapping rhythmically on his desk. OP, coffee. Not please, not could you grab me some, just coffee, like I was a butler in a 1950s noir movie. Still, I tried to be professional. "I'll be right back with you, Frank," I called out, balancing the precarious stack of folders in my arms like a Jenga tower. But Frank wasn't interested in waiting. Tap, tap, tap. OP, coffee. I sighed, turned around, and walked the 7 steps back into his office. "I'll be right with you, Frank," I said again, louder this time. I even tilted the folders slightly to make a point. "Look, Frank, my hands are full," but he just stared at me like I was wasting his precious air. I turned around again, ready to finish my task, when I heard it. Bang, bang, bang! OP, coffee! Now! That was it. No, really, that was it. I turned right back into his office, stepped into the middle of the carpet, and without breaking eye contact, slipped my arms out from under the stack of folders. Crash! Over 300 files hit the floor in a glorious explosion of paperwork. Receipts fluttered in the air like sad confetti. Envelopes burst open, rubber bands snapped, and Post-it notes scattered like autumn leaves in a windstorm. The room was silent except for the soft whisper of pages settling to the floor. I stepped over the chaos without a word, walked up to his desk, plucked his coffee mug from the edge, and flashed him the fakest customer service smile I'd ever given anyone in my life. "Coming right up," I chirped. I went to the break room, filled the mug with the darkest, bitterest coffee on the pot, then proceeded to dump half a cup of sugar into it. No cream, just a syrupy, gritty mess. I stirred it until it looked like molasses with a caffeine problem and marched it back to his office. With a flourish, I slammed it down on his desk, just hard enough for a tidal wave of sickly sweet coffee to slosh over the rim and soak into his calendar, his pristine white shirt, and his designer leather chair. He gasped. He spluttered. He opened his mouth to yell. I didn't give him a chance. I walked straight back to my desk, sat down, picked up the phone, and called my lunch appointment from earlier that day. It was a job interview I'd been unsure about. A small but promising company looking for someone to handle admin work, minus the ego-tripping managers. When the hiring manager answered, I said, "Hey, if that offer's still on the table, I'd love to accept." It was. I was officially working for a new company 22 minutes later. No 2 weeks notice, no dramatic goodbye, just a hot mess of folders on the floor and one ruined tie. I packed my things in silence while Frank tried to process what just happened. I think he was still dripping coffee off his cuff when I walked out the front door for the last time. A few months later, I ran into a former coworker at a downtown happy hour. She laughed when she saw me and said, "You know, Frank's gone through 4 different replacements since you left." I raised my glass and smirked. Guess no one wants to fetch coffee for jerks anymore. Moral of the story, respect your coworkers. And don't mess with the person who knows exactly how much sugar fits in your mug. Old ways used to provide so much opportunity for drama, slamming a phone down so hard the bells rang, throwing physical files at someone, ramming the keys of a typewriter. The possibilities were endless. Now we've been reduced to, per my last email. And our second story, how we turned $70 into a dead yard masterpiece. So this one's from around 2008, 2009, when the economy was tanking and things were rough for a lot of people. I was just starting out doing odd jobs to make ends meet. My friend and I, both young and scraping by, decided to team up and do landscaping work. We pooled our money, bought some tools, and advertised on Craigslist. No fancy marketing, just manual labor and some elbow grease. One day, we got a call from Karen, who was living just down the street. Her yard was a mess, and she wanted us to come over and do some landscaping work. She specifically wanted a raised garden bed that wrapped around her house with a particular design she had in mind based on her neighbor's yard. Sounded simple enough. She asked us to start ASAP, so we agreed, even though there was something a bit off about the whole thing. Still, we were young and in need of work, so we didn't question it. Karen wouldn't agree to a price up front, and every time we tried to discuss payment, she'd get defensive and change the subject. She kept saying, "Oh, we'll figure it out later." In hindsight, that was a huge red flag, but we were desperate, so we didn't push it. We spent 2 grueling days working in the hot summer sun, hauling bricks, dirt, and mulch. Karen's yard was a mess, and it took us way longer than we expected. We kept thinking, this is going to pay off, right? But as the second day ended, Karen still hadn't given us any clear answers about payment. When we finally asked her directly, she went off, becoming nasty and dismissive. She told us, "You should be grateful for the work. You don't need a contract for something like this." My friend and I were fed up at this point, so I grabbed him and went to confront her. After a tense, heated conversation, Karen finally offered us $70 for 2 full days of backbreaking labor. Yes, $70. We were shocked, angry, and honestly felt completely disrespected, but we weren't done yet. We grabbed our tools, loaded up our truck, and as we were about to leave, I had an idea. We had a large tarp that we'd been using to collect all the waste. It had a huge pile of clippings, dirt, and weeds. I decided to drag that tarp, full of garbage, into the middle of her pristine front yard and dump it all there. She came running out, begging us not to do it, but it was too late. I didn't care anymore. We dumped it, said our piece, and left, feeling like we'd made our point. But here's where it gets fun. My friend's mom was a professional landscaper, and when she heard what had happened, she had some ideas on how to get back at Karen. She suggested a little revenge plan. We should grab our backpack sprayers, fill them with salt water, and make a midnight run to Karen's house. The salt water would kill anything it touched, flowers, grass, small trees, everything. I loved the idea. A couple of months later, we made our move. We parked down the street in the dead of night, around 2 a.m., and walked to Karen's house with our sprayers. We went to work, spraying every inch of her front yard. The grass, flowers, and even a few small trees we could reach. We doused them in salt water. We made sure there wasn't a patch of green left untouched. A month later, we went back to check on the results, and it was glorious. The entire yard was dead. Flowers, grass, trees, everything had withered and turned brown. Karen's beautiful yard was now a barren wasteland. I couldn't stop laughing. That was the real payback for how she'd treated us. Karen never came back to us for any more work, and we heard through the grapevine that her neighbors were starting to notice. Her once pristine yard was now the eyesore of the neighborhood. We didn't hear from her directly after that, but we knew the message had been received loud and clear. Moral of the story, don't mess with people who are just trying to do honest work, especially when you try to scam them out of their money. Karen learned the hard way that if you treat people like crap, there might just be consequences. And sometimes those consequences come in the form of a midnight saltwater spray. I've never understood the mentality of people like this. Let me just screw over this person who knows where I live and did me a huge service. Your revenge story is exactly why I'd never mess with someone from Craigslist, especially when they've been to my home. Good on you, though, for getting revenge in a satisfying and appropriate way. And our last story. The Airbnb nightmare next door. So I live in a neighborhood that has unfortunately become a hotspot for Airbnb rentals. I won't go into all the details, but suffice to say, it's been a nightmare. The worst incident was earlier this year when my house got hit by 20 bullets during a gunfight at a neighbor's Airbnb party. It was terrifying. To put it mildly, I'm already on edge about the Airbnb situation. Last night, I was already frustrated when I noticed that the guests at the Airbnb next door were blocking our shared driveway. This isn't the first time this has happened. As usual, I went out to politely ask them to move their car so I could park. They responded rudely saying, "Ain't got the keys." No, before getting into another car and driving off, leaving the first car still blocking my driveway. I've had enough of this kind of nonsense. I've tried reaching out to the Airbnb owner multiple times, but she's completely ignored me since May. After being completely disregarded by her in the past, I figured she wasn't going to help me this time either, so I took matters into my own hands. I sent her a quick text, then I called the non-emergency police line to explain the situation. The officer said they would send someone to make the guests move their car. Well, it turns out they didn't just ask the guests to move the car, they ended up towing it. To my surprise, the Airbnb owner texted me this morning absolutely furious. She said, "After you called the police, only minutes after notifying me, they had it towed. They didn't have an opportunity to move it." I honestly wasn't expecting that outcome, but at the end of the day, I just wanted my driveway clear so I could go about my day without any more hassle. The owner was upset because she claimed I didn't give her guests a chance to move the car, but honestly, I'd already gone out there, politely asked them to move, and they just laughed it off. The tone of the whole situation left me feeling that I couldn't just let them keep ignoring my requests. This wasn't the first time something like this happened, and I was honestly tired of waiting for the owner to take responsibility. Now I feel like I've done what I needed to do. The last thing I want is for the situation to escalate, especially after everything that's happened with the Airbnbs in the neighborhood, but it's frustrating when people don't respect boundaries in my property. I understand the frustration of having a car towed, and I do feel a little bad about that, but I was just trying to take care of my own space and make sure things didn't get out of hand. In hindsight, I'm still not sure if I'm in the wrong here for calling the police, but at least I have the peace of mind that my driveway was cleared, and I've made my point that I won't tolerate this behavior. After receiving the Airbnb owner's message, I decided to take the high road in my reply, even though I was still upset by her tone. Here's how I responded. My message. 1. I did ask them to move the car. Unfortunately, they responded with, "Ain't got the key, no," and then proceeded to get into another vehicle and drive away. 2. I didn't wait for your response because I haven't heard back from you regarding the previous messages I've sent since May. I've sent 4 messages and none have been answered. I'm sorry to hear that your guest's car was towed. I understand how frustrating that can be. My only intention in calling the police was to have someone with more authority request that they move the car, as they had refused to do so when I asked. I never asked for the car to be towed, and I was surprised when I found out it happened. I'm hoping this will keep things civil, but if something like this happens again, I won't be texting her. I'll just go straight to the authorities. And I'll have the peace of mind that I tried my best to keep things respectful this time. At the end of the day, my goal is simple. I just want to enjoy my property without constant interruptions and issues with the Airbnb guests next door. Whether the owner agrees or not, I'm making sure I handle things appropriately for my own peace of mind. But you did give him a chance to move it, and you texted the owner who did not get back to you at the time. The non-emergency line was an option, and you took it. I expect the owner to be much more responsive to you in the future. Perhaps the listing should include info that the driveway is shared. Read the listing, see what it says. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.